Welcome back to another journey through the corridors of time. Tonight, we're traveling far from the familiar comfort of your bed, across centuries and continents, to a world that would challenge every assumption you hold about daily life. Picture yourself settling in as we explore the Aztec Empire, not the glorious temples and golden artifacts you might imagine, but the grinding, relentless rhythm of ordinary existence in one of history's most demanding civilizations. The year is 1500, and you find yourself in the heart of Mesoamerica, where the morning mist rises from Lake Texcoco and the great city of Tenochtitlan spreads across artificial islands like something from a dream. But this is no dream. This is a world where every sunrise brings new obligations, where the gods demand constant appeasement, and where survival itself requires a delicate balance between human ingenuity and natural forces that could destroy everything you've ever built in a single season. As you drift tonight, imagine the weight of tribute obligations pressing down like the humid air of the Mexican highlands. Imagine the constant awareness that your life, your family's life, hangs in the balance of cosmic forces you can barely comprehend. The Aztec Empire was magnificent, yes, but it was built on foundations that would test the limits of human endurance. Let the rhythm of their daily struggles wash over you. Here we begin with the most fundamental challenge of all, simply growing enough food to survive another day. The first pale light of dawn creeps across Lake Texcoco, and already you can hear the soft splash of wooden paddles cutting through dark water. This is your world now, a farmer in the Aztec Empire, and your day begins before the sun has even considered showing its face. The air is thick with moisture from the lake, carrying the scent of wet earth and growing things, but also the weight of endless responsibility. Your home sits on a chinampa, of those remarkable floating gardens that the Spanish would later call a wonder of the world. But wonder is the last thing on your mind as you step from your reed mat onto the damp earth of your artificial island. The chinampa stretches before you, perhaps 100 feet long and 30 feet wide, a rectangle of rich soil held in place by woven reed barriers and anchored to the lake bottom by the deep roots of willow trees you planted years ago. Imagine yourself kneeling in the soft mud at the water's edge, your hands already dark with soil that you've carefully built up, layer by layer, season after season. This isn't just dirt, this is a delicate alchemy of lake bottom sediment, decomposed vegetation, and human waste that you've transported here in woven baskets, trip after back-breaking trip. The soil must be exactly right to sandy, and your crops will starve, to clay and they'll drown. Your ancestors perfected this knowledge over generations, and now it lives in your calloused hands and aching back. The morning ritual begins with checking the water level. The lake rises and falls with the seasons, and your chinampa must rise and fall with it. To high, and your plants drown, to low, and they wither under the highland sun. You wade into the murky water, feeling the soft mud squelch between your toes, testing the drainage channels that thread between your planted rows like veins in a leaf. Each channel must be maintained, cleared of debris, adjusted for optimal water flow. It's meticulous work that never ends. Your world revolves around corn maize, the sacred grain that forms the backbone of existence. The tall stalks rustle in the morning breeze, their leaves heavy with dew that you brush away as you move between the rows. Each plant represents countless hours of labor, from the initial planting in carefully prepared mounds to the constant vigilance required to keep them alive. You plant the seeds in clusters, 4 or 5 to a mound, with beans climbing up the corn stalks and squash spreading between them, the 3 sisters that sustain life itself. But corn is temperamental, too much rain, and the ears rot before they can mature. Too little rain, and the kernels shrivel to nothing. The highland climate brings both extremes, often in the same season. You watch the sky constantly, reading the subtle signs in cloud formations and wind patterns. Your survival depends on predicting weather with an accuracy that would challenge modern meteorologists. Between the rows of corn, you tend smaller crops that add variety to your family's diet: tomatoes, peppers, herbs that flavor the endless succession of tortillas that form the foundation of every meal. Your wife rises even earlier than you do, grinding corn on the metate, that volcanic stone slab worn smooth by generations of women's hands. The sound of her grinding scritch, scritch, scritch becomes the rhythm of your morning, as constant as your own breathing. Your children help, of course, because there's no choice in the matter. Your 8-year-old son follows you through the chinampa, carrying water in pottery vessels, learning to read the subtle signs of plant health, the slight yellowing that indicates nitrogen deficiency, the wilting that means the drainage channels need attention. Your 12-year-old daughter works alongside her mother, but her eyes often drift toward the great city of Tenochtitlan, the ineffable across the water. At her age, she understands what you've tried to shield her from, that her beauty might attract the attention of tribute collectors, that she might be selected for temple service from which she would never return. The weight of tribute obligations presses down on every decision you make. The empire demands its share of everything: corn, beans, cotton cloth, pottery, precious feathers, cacao beans that serve as currency. The tribute collectors arrive with their painted codices, marking down exactly what's owed from your chinampa. They count your corn ears with mechanical precision, indifferent to whether their demands leave your family with enough to survive the season. Tribute isn't just about crops. Young people, the strongest, the most beautiful, the most talented, are also tribute. You've watched neighboring families lose sons and daughters to the empire's appetite. The boys might become warriors, which offers a path to honor and advancement, but also a high probability of death on distant battlefields. The girls face a different fate: service in temples, noble households, or the ultimate honor of sacrifice to ensure the sun continues its daily journey across the sky. The constant threat of sacrifice colors everything. It's not random violence, it's a fundamental part of how the universe operates. The gods gave their blood to create humanity, and humanity must give its blood to keep the cosmos functioning. You understand this logic, even accept it, but understanding doesn't make it easier when the priests come looking for offerings from your community. Your workday extends from dawn until the sun sets behind the mountains. Every task requires careful consideration of resource allocation. Water must be hauled from the lake for drinking, cooking, and irrigation. Fuel must be gathered for the cooking fires: dried reeds, wood scraps, anything that burns. Every decision involves trade-offs between immediate needs and long-term survival. The tools you work with are simple but effective: wooden digging sticks, stone hoes, obsidian knives sharp enough to split individual plant hairs. Your hands are permanent maps of this labor, scarred from obsidian cuts, stained by plant juices, worn smooth in places by constant contact with rope and wood and stone. You make and repair your own tools, weave your own baskets, construct and maintain the reed barriers that hold your chinampa together. The social pressure never relents. Your neighbors watch everything: how well your crops grow, how your children behave, whether your family meets its tribute obligations on time and in full. Reputation matters in ways that can mean life or death. A reputation for laziness or dishonesty can result in your family being marked for extra tribute, or worse, being selected for sacrifice to set an example for the community. The religious calendar dominates your yearly rhythm with its endless cycle of festivals and ceremonies. Some bring welcome breaks from labor: communal feasts, dancing, celebrations of the harvest. Others bring dread festivals that require human sacrifice, ceremonies where the priests select offerings from the gathered population. You participate because you must, because the survival of the world depends on proper observance of divine requirements, but also because refusing participation marks you as a threat to cosmic order. Whether disasters can destroy everything you've built in a single day. Hailstorms shred mature crops just before harvest. Floods wash away entire chinampas. Drought withers plants despite your careful irrigation. When disaster strikes, there's no insurance, no government assistance, no safety net beyond what your extended family and local community can provide. You rebuild because you must, starting over with the same backbreaking labor that created your livelihood in the first place. The isolation weighs on you. Your chinampa sits surrounded by water, connected to the larger world only by narrow causeways and waterways that can be cut off at any time by political decisions made in the imperial capital. News from the outside world arrives filtered through layers of imperial bureaucracy and local rumor. You hear whispers of strange pale-skinned visitors arriving from the Eastern Ocean, but such things seem as distant as the movements of stars. Your body bears the cumulative cost of this existence. Your back aches constantly from bending over crops. Your knees protest every morning as you rise from sleep. Cuts and scrapes heal slowly in the humid environment. Parasites and diseases spread easily in a world where human waste becomes fertilizer and clean water is always a precious resource. You expect to live perhaps 40 years if you're fortunate, and every one of those years will be marked by physical discomfort that modern humans would consider unbearable. The emotional toll runs even deeper. You love your children desperately, but you know that loving them too openly might make it harder to accept their potential selection for tribute or sacrifice. You invest enormous labor in crops that might be destroyed by weather or claimed by tribute collectors. You build relationships in a community where everyone understands that survival sometimes requires betraying neighbors to protect family. Yet somehow, life continues. Children laugh as they play in the shallow water between chinampas. Families gather for evening meals, sharing stories and small jokes that make the endless labor bearable. Young people fall in love despite uncertain futures. Communities celebrate successful harvests and mourn shared losses. The human capacity for finding meaning and joy persists even under conditions that would break the spirit of most modern individuals. As the sun sets over Lake Texcoco, painting the water the color of beaten copper, you stand at the edge of your chinampa and survey the day's work. Your corn grows taller. Your family survives another day. Tomorrow will bring the same challenges, the same grinding necessity, the same delicate balance between human effort and forces beyond your control. The stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky, the same stars that guided your ancestors and will guide your descendants through this endless cycle of labor and survival. The water laps gently against the reed barriers that hold your world together, a sound as constant as your own heartbeat, as endless as the demands of existence in a world where simply staying alive requires everything you have to give. As the morning mist continues to rise from Lake Texcoco, we shift our gaze from the simple chinampas to the magnificent palace complex where another man faces his own impossible burdens. Imagine yourself now in the sandaled feet of Moctezuma Xocoyotzin Montezuma, the younger, the ninth ruler of the Aztec Empire, awakening not to the sound of grinding corn, but to the soft rustle of cotton curtains and the distant murmur of hundreds of servants beginning their daily rituals of service. The year is 1502, and you have just been elected Huitlatawani Great Speaker of an empire that stretches from coast to coast across the Mexican highlands. You are perhaps 34 years old, in the prime of your physical strength, chosen from among the royal bloodline for your proven military prowess and administrative acumen. But as you rise from your jaguar-skin sleeping mat in the pre-dawn darkness, you already feel the weight of cosmic responsibility settling across your shoulders like a feathered cloak. Your palace occupies an entire city block in the heart of Tenochtitlan, a complex of interconnected buildings that house not just your family, but the entire machinery of imperial administration. The walls around you are built from the finest stone, covered with murals that tell the history of your people in brilliant colors, deep blues made from precious lapis lazuli, rich reds from cochineal insects, gleaming golds that catch and reflect the light of oil lamps. But these beautiful walls are also your prison, for as Huitlatawani, you can never again walk among your people as an ordinary man. The morning ritual begins with purification. Your body servants, young men from noble families who serve in your household as part of their education, help you wash with water that has been scented with flowers and blessed by priests. Every garment you wear has been woven specifically for your use and will never be worn again. Your clothing reflects your divine status cotton, so fine it feels like silk against your skin, dyed in colors reserved for royalty, embroidered with patterns that tell stories of gods and heroes and the cosmic forces that govern existence. Your breakfast arrives on golden plates, not the thin tortillas and watery stew that sustain the farmer on his chinampa, but delicacies gathered from across the empire. Chocolate prepared with honey and vanilla, served in cups carved from jade. Tropical fruits carried by relay runners from the coastal region's mangoes, papayas, pineapples that arrived fresh despite traveling hundreds of miles. Fish from both the saltwater and freshwater lakes, prepared by cooks who have spent decades perfecting their art. Turkey prepared in dozens of different ways, seasoned with spices that cost more than most families earn in a year. But even this luxury carries its burden. Every meal must be tasted by servants before it reaches your lips, not because you distrust your cooks, but because the cosmic balance requires such precautions. You are not just a menu but a living representative of the gods on earth, and your death from poison or disease would threaten the very foundations of the universe. You eat in solitude, surrounded by servants, but speaking to no one, because casual conversation would diminish the sacred nature of your person. The daily administrative routine consumes most of your morning. Tribute records must be reviewed, endless lists recorded in pictographic writing that detail exactly what each province owes to the imperial treasury. Corn and beans measured by the thousand, bundles of cotton cloth counted by the hundreds, cacao beans tallied in amounts that would stagger the imagination. Your scribes spread bark paper codices before you, their painted symbols telling the story of an empire's wealth flowing toward this center, like water flowing downhill. But tribute is more than economics, it's the visible proof of your power and, more importantly, of the gods' favor toward your rule. When a province fails to meet its tribute obligations, it's not just a financial problem, but a cosmic disturbance that threatens the balance of the universe. Military expeditions must be organized, not just to collect what's owed, but to re-establish the proper relationship between center and periphery, between the divine order and earthly administration. Your war council meets in a hall lined with shields captured from defeated enemies, each one a story of conquest and submission. The great warriors who advise you, men whose bodies bear the scars of countless battles, whose elaborate costumes display jaguar pelts and eagle feathers earned through individual acts of bravery, spread maps before you that show the ever-expanding boundaries of your domain. But expansion brings its own problems. Each new conquest creates new administrative challenges, new tribute obligations to monitor, new populations that must be integrated into the imperial system or are held in check through constant shows of force. The religious responsibilities weigh most heavily. As Huitlatawani, you are the chief priest of the empire, responsible for ensuring that the gods receive proper worship and sacrifice. The calendar of ceremonies never stops. Festivals that require your personal participation, rituals that demand your physical presence, sacrificial offerings that you must oversee to ensure cosmic harmony. You understand that the sun rises each morning because the gods are properly fed with human blood, and that this feeding is ultimately your responsibility. The great temple of Tenochtitlan dominates the view from your palace windows, its twin pyramids reaching toward the sky like stone mountains. From your quarters, you can hear the constant sound of ceremonies, the drums that beat in rhythm with the cosmic heartbeat, the conch shell trumpets that call the faithful to prayer, the chants of priests whose voices never rest. But you also hear the sounds that pilgrims and visitors never mention in their reports, the screams of sacrificial victims, the wet sound of obsidian knives cutting through human flesh, the thud of hearts being placed in sacred vessels. You've participated in these ceremonies since childhood, first as an observer, then as an assistant, finally as the presiding authority. Your hands have held beating human hearts, felt their warmth and weight before placing them in offering bowls. You understand that these deaths ensure the continuation of life, that the cosmic balance requires such exchanges, but understanding doesn't eliminate the emotional toll. The faces of victims haunt your dreams, young warriors captured in battle, beautiful women selected for their perfection, children chosen for their innocence. Your family life exists within this context of cosmic responsibility. Your wives, and you have many, because royal marriages cement political alliances across the empire, understand that they are married not just to a man, but to an institution. Your children grow up knowing that their father belongs first to the gods, then to the empire, and only lastly to his family. Casual affection, the simple pleasure of playing with your sons or listening to your daughter's laughter, becomes a luxury that must be scheduled around ceremonial obligations. The loneliness of absolute power weighs on you constantly. You are surrounded by people, but can never have genuine friendships, because every relationship involves calculations of political advantage and cosmic propriety. Your subjects approach you with elaborate ceremonies of submission, speaking to you only through intermediaries, averting their eyes from your divine presence. Even your closest advisors maintain the formal distance required by your sacred status. The prophecies trouble your sleep. Ancient texts speak of the return of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, who will come from the east to reclaim his kingdom. The exact timing remains unclear, but various calculations suggest the critical time approaches. You consult with priests and astronomers, studying star charts and calendar wheels, trying to understand whether the cosmic signs point toward renewal or catastrophe. In 1517, the first reports arrive of strange vessels spotted off the eastern coast. Your spies describe floating temples carrying pale-skinned beings who command thunder and lightning, who ride four-legged creatures, like gods, mounted on earthbound clouds. The descriptions seem impossible, but your intelligence network has never provided false information. You order increased surveillance and try to understand what these visitations might mean for the cosmic order you're sworn to maintain. The waiting becomes torture. More reports arrive. These strange beings have landed, have fought with coastal peoples, have demonstrated powers that seem to confirm their divine nature. Your advisors debate whether these visitors represent the fulfillment of prophecy or a new kind of threat that requires military response. But how do you wage war against gods? How do you negotiate with beings whose very existence challenges everything you understand about the nature of reality? When Hernan Courts and his expedition reach the outskirts of your empire in 1519, you face an impossible decision. The prophecies suggest these might be divine visitors who must be welcomed with appropriate ceremony. But your military advisors point out that, divine or not, these strangers represent a potential threat to imperial authority that cannot be ignored. You choose a middle path, cautious diplomacy combined with careful observation, but middle paths rarely succeed when dealing with forces beyond ordinary comprehension. The meeting with Courts, when it finally occurs in November 1519, must rank among the strangest encounters in human history. You approach dressed in full imperial regalia, feathered headdress that reaches toward the sky, cape of Quetzal feathers that shimmers like green fire, golden ornaments that reflect the light like captured sunlight. But the Spanish leader, this man who might be a god, wears metal clothing that clanks when he moves and smells of sweat and horses and unfamiliar foods. The conversation, conducted through interpreters who struggle to translate concepts that have no equivalent in either language, reveals the magnitude of the crisis you face. These visitors claim to represent a distant king and a god whose demands seem to conflict fundamentally with everything your empire stands upon. They want gold, but not for the ritual purposes you understand. They want submission, but to authorities you've never heard of. They want to stop the sacrifices that keep the cosmos functioning. Your decision to welcome them into Tenochtitlan as honored guests reflects both political calculation and genuine uncertainty about their divine nature. If they are gods, refusing hospitality would bring cosmic disaster. If they are merely foreign humans, treating them as honored guests demonstrates imperial confidence and might lead to advantageous alliances. But the decision transforms your capital into a trap, with yourself as the most valuable prisoner. The months of captivity that follow test every aspect of your character and training. Courts and his men control your movements, monitor your communications, use your authority to legitimate their own commands. But they need you alive and apparently willing, because your death would signal open rebellion throughout the empire. You become a living symbol manipulated by forces you never fully understand, watching your authority drain away drop by drop like blood from a sacrificial victim. The psychological pressure becomes unbearable. Your own people begin to question your legitimacy. How can a true Huitlato Ani allow foreigners to dictate imperial policy? Your nobles whisper that the gods have withdrawn their favor, that your captivity proves you were never worthy of divine authority. But resistance seems equally impossible. These strangers command powers that can level buildings and kill warriors at distances your weapons cannot match. The final tragedy unfolds during the uprising of 1520, when your people finally rise against the Spanish occupation. Your appearance before the crowd, intended to calm the rebellion, instead provokes their final rejection of your authority. The stones that strike you down are thrown not just at your physical body, but at everything you represented: the cosmic order that failed to protect the empire, the divine authority that proved powerless against foreign invasion, the entire worldview that these strangers have revealed to be inadequate. Your death, whether from the stones, or from despair, or from some final understanding of the magnitude of the catastrophe, marks the end of more than just one man's life. With you dies the cosmic certainty that had sustained the Aztec Empire for generations. The elaborate ceremonies that had once seemed essential for maintaining universal harmony appear as empty rituals that failed their most crucial test. The irony of your fate would not be lost on future generations. You had ruled an empire built on the premise that proper sacrifice and ceremony could control cosmic forces and ensure divine favor. But when the ultimate test came, when strange gods arrived with unfamiliar demands, all the accumulated wisdom of your civilization proved insufficient. The gold that your enemies sought existed in abundance, but its ritual significance could not be translated into terms they understood. The military power that had conquered much of Mesoamerica could not comprehend or counter weapons that operated according to different principles entirely. In your final moments, perhaps you understood that you had been caught between two worlds: the ancient cosmic order that had shaped your entire existence, and the emerging global system that had no place for the religious certainties that had guided your every decision. You had tried to serve as a bridge between incompatible realities, and like all bridges subjected to impossible stresses, you were destined to collapse under pressures no individual could bear. The great palace where you had awakened each morning to the weight of cosmic responsibility stands empty, its murals fading, its golden ornaments carried away to distant lands where their religious significance will never be understood. But perhaps, in the gentle darkness of sleep, we can imagine a different ending, one where the morning mist still rises from Lake Texcoco, where the sound of grinding corn still marks the rhythm of daily life, where the burden of absolute power rests easier on shoulders that never had to choose between incompatible definitions of divine authority. The morning light grows stronger now, burning away the mist that has shrouded Lake Texcoco, and we find ourselves standing on one of the great causeways that connect the island city of Tenochtitlan to the mainland. Imagine yourself as a traveler approaching this wonder for the first time, your feet finding purchase on stones fitted so precisely that no mortar was needed to hold them in place. The causeway stretches ahead of you, a stone bridge across an inland sea, perfectly straight despite spanning several miles of open water. From this vantage point, the true scale of Tenochtitlan reveals itself gradually, like a dream taking shape in the mind of someone slowly awakening. The city spreads before you across multiple islands, both natural and artificial, connected by a network of canals that gleam like silver threads in the morning sun. This is not merely a city, it's an engineering marvel that would challenge the capabilities of any civilization, ancient or modern, a testament to human ingenuity that rose from the waters of a highland lake through pure determination and mathematical precision. The causeway beneath your feet tells its own story of technical mastery. These stones were quarried from distant mountains and transported here by human labor alone, no wheels, no beasts of burden, just thousands of workers moving massive blocks through careful coordination and inexhaustible patience. Each stone was shaped to fit its particular position, creating a roadway smooth enough for royal litters, but strong enough to bear the weight of armies. Gaps in the causeway mark the locations of removable wooden bridges, a defensive feature that could isolate the city from land-based assaults at a moment's notice. As you walk toward the city center, the water on either side of the causeway reveals the ingenious agricultural system that feeds this population of perhaps 200,000 souls. The chinampas stretch in every direction, their geometric precision creating a patchwork of green and brown that extends to the horizon. Between them, narrow canals form a transportation network more efficient than any road system. Canoes loaded with produce, building materials, and trade goods moving in constant streams toward the city's markets. The smell of the water carries complex information to those who know how to read it. The slight brackishness indicates the lake's mineral content, which varies with seasonal rainfall and affects both agriculture and the city's fresh water supply. The earthy scent of decomposing vegetation speaks of the constant cycle of growth and decay that sustains the Chinampa system. Underlying everything is the faint but persistent odor of human activity, cooking fires, waste processing, the leather and textiles that indicate a thriving commercial center. Your first glimpse of the city proper comes as you approach the main plaza, but even preparation cannot diminish this shock of scale. The central temple complex rises before you like a small mountain, its twin pyramids reaching toward the sky with mathematical precision that seems to deny the limitations of human engineering. The base of this structure covers several acres, built from millions of stone blocks fitted together with an accuracy that would satisfy modern architects. Each level of the pyramid reduces in size according to geometric principles that create visual harmony while providing structural stability. The plaza surrounding the temple can hold perhaps 60,000 people during major ceremonies, a space larger than most European cities of the time. But it's not empty space, it's carefully designed architecture that channels crowds, creates sight lines, provides acoustic properties that allow a single speaker to address vast multitudes. The stone paving, worn smooth by countless feet, shows subtle drainage patterns that prevent flooding during the rainy season. Even the placement of smaller structures around the plaza's perimeter reflects careful planning that balances ceremonial requirements with practical necessities. Walking through the residential districts reveals urban planning principles that anticipate problems most cities never solve. The neighborhoods are organized around courtyards that provide communal space while maintaining family privacy. Streets running carefully planned grids that facilitate movement while creating defensible positions during emergencies. Building heights are regulated not by law, but by shared understanding of how structures should relate to one another and to the sacred geography of temple complexes. The canal system that threads through every district represents perhaps the most sophisticated urban transportation network developed anywhere in the Americas. These waterways are not natural streams, but carefully engineered channels that maintain precise depths and flow rates. Lock systems control water levels between different sections of the city. Dredging operations, conducted continuously by specialized work crews, prevent siltation that would disrupt traffic flow. Landing areas at regular intervals provide access points where canoes can load and unload cargo without blocking navigation. Fresh water arrives through an aqueduct system that spans miles of lake and marshland, bringing spring water from the mainland hills directly to neighborhood distribution points throughout the city. The engineering challenges involved in maintaining consistent water pressure across such distances, while preventing contamination and managing seasonal variations in supply, required mathematical and construction skills that rival anything achieved by Roman engineers. Stone channels, elevated on perfectly aligned supports, carry this water across gaps where the lakebed drops away, creating architectural features that serve practical purposes while achieving visual elegance. Waste management in a city of this size represents a logistical challenge that most urban centers never successfully address, but Tenochtitlan's solution demonstrates typical Aztec ingenuity. Human waste is collected systematically and transported to agricultural areas where it provides fertilizer for the Chinampa system. Organic garbage becomes compost, food scraps feed animals or go into the compost system. Even ash from cooking fires finds use in construction mortar. Nothing is wasted because waste represents inefficiency that a city surrounded by water cannot afford. The marketplace, the Great Tlatelolco market, that operates daily in the sister city across a narrow canal, provides a window into the economic complexity that supports this urban concentration. Imagine yourself wandering through sections devoted to specific commodities, each with its own specialized vocabulary and trading customs. The food section alone would overwhelm any modern supermarket. Varieties of corn in every color imaginable, beans and squash in dozens of different forms, fruits and vegetables from climate zones spanning the entire continent. Precious goods occupy their own carefully guarded sections. Jade merchants display stones that range from pale green to deep forest hues, each piece chosen for specific ritual or decorative purposes. Gold workers shape metal into forms that serve religious rather than monetary functions. Plates for temple offerings, ornaments that transform human wearers into earthly representatives of divine forces. Feather workers create artistic masterpieces from the plumes of birds gathered from tropical forests hundreds of miles away, their products destined for ceremonies that require beauty to communicate with gods. The textile section reveals a sophistication that European visitors consistently underestimated. Cotton cloth so fine it rivals silk, dyed with colors that remain vibrant centuries later, woven with patterns that encode historical and religious information. Clothing here serves as both practical covering and sophisticated communication system. Patterns that indicate social status, colors that carry religious significance, decorative elements that tell stories about the wearer's family history and community connections. But perhaps most remarkable is the underlying organizational system that makes such commercial complexity possible. The market operates without metal currency, using instead a complex system of exchange rates based on cacao beans, cotton mantles, and quills filled with gold dust. Prices fluctuate according to supply and demand principles that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of economic forces. Quality control happens through reputation systems that can destroy a merchant's livelihood for a single transaction involving inferior goods. The residential architecture reveals engineering principles adapted to specific environmental challenges. Houses rise on stone foundations that provide protection from seasonal flooding while allowing moisture to drain away from living spaces. Wall construction uses local materials, stone and adobe in combinations that provide thermal mass for temperature control while remaining flexible enough to absorb earthquake stresses without catastrophic failure. Roof systems shed rainwater efficiently while providing insulation against both heat and cold. Interior spaces reflect cultural values that prioritize different aspects of daily life than European architecture of the same period. Large communal areas accommodate extended family gatherings that form the basis of social organization. Kitchen areas, with their specialized cooking hearths and food storage systems, occupy positions of central importance. Sleeping areas remain small and simple because most daily activities happen in shared spaces or outdoors. The religious architecture scattered throughout residential districts demonstrates how sacred and secular life interweave in Aztec urban planning. Neighborhood temples provide focal points for community ceremonies while serving practical functions as meeting places and emergency shelters. Shrine complexes mark important points in the city's sacred geography, locations where supernatural forces concentrate, intersections where cosmic energies require proper acknowledgement and management. Archaeological evidence reveals construction techniques that modern engineers study with professional admiration. Foundation systems extend deep into the lake bottom, using timber pilings driven into stable substrata to provide support for structures that must bear enormous weight while remaining stable in earthquake-prone terrain. Stone cutting precision achieved without metal tools demonstrates mathematical and technical skills that challenge assumptions about technological development. The city's defensive systems integrate seamlessly with its commercial and residential functions. Causeways that facilitate daily transportation can be severed quickly to isolate the city during military emergencies. Canal systems that normally carry trade goods can be blocked to create military barriers or open to flood attackers. Building heights and street widths create sightlines that favor defenders while providing positions from which projectile weapons can control key intersections. Water management throughout the city reflects understanding of hydraulic principles that wouldn't be matched in European cities for several centuries. Storm drainage systems prevent flooding during intense rainfall while conserving water for dry season use. Sewage disposal integrates with agricultural systems to maximize nutrient cycling while minimizing health hazards. Fresh water distribution maintains quality through careful separation of supply sources and systematic maintenance of delivery infrastructure. The astronomical alignments built into major structures demonstrate how practical urban planning integrates with religious and scientific knowledge systems. Temple orientations correspond to critical dates in agricultural and ceremonial calendars, allowing architectural features to serve as community-wide timekeeping devices. Street grids follow celestial alignments that reinforce religious teachings while providing navigation references for daily activities. As evening approaches and you climb to one of the temple platforms for a view across the entire city, the scale of human achievement spread below becomes almost overwhelming. Thousands of cooking fires begin to flicker across the residential districts, their smoke rising straight up in the still air like offerings to the darkening sky. Canoes continue their steady movement through the canal networks, their occupants calling to one another in voices that carry clearly across the water. The sound of daily life, children playing, adults calling greetings, the splash of paddles, the distant sound of drums from neighborhood ceremonies creates a symphony of human community that has sustained itself in this unlikely location through sheer determination and technical brilliance. The stars emerging overhead shine down on a city that represents perhaps the most successful example of sustainable urban development in human history. Every aspect of Tenochtitlan's design reflects careful consideration of environmental constraints and resource limitations. The city exists in harmony with its natural setting, not through romantic idealism, but through hard-headed engineering that maximizes efficiency while minimizing waste. It demonstrates what human communities can achieve when necessity forces innovation and cultural values prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term convenience. From this height, looking out over the darkening lake toward the mountains that ring the horizon, you can almost imagine the city as it appeared to its first European visitors impossible, dreamlike, to perfectly plan to be real. But reality it was, and reality remains in the archaeological evidence that continues to emerge from beneath modern Mexico City. The stones still tell their stories of mathematical precision and engineering brilliance. The canals, though filled with modern construction, still follow their original alignments. The underlying grid of streets still influences traffic patterns in one of the world's largest metropolitan areas. In your imagination, as sleep begins to claim you, perhaps you can hear the gentle splash of water against stone foundations, the soft sound of wind moving through reed walls, the distant murmur of human voices speaking in languages that measure time by the movements of planets and found the sacred embedded in every practical decision about how people should live together in harmony with forces larger than themselves. The night deepens over Tenochtitlan, and we find ourselves climbing the steep stone steps of the Great Temple Pyramid, following a figure whose silhouette moves with practiced certainty through the darkness. Imagine yourself now in the worn sandals of a priest of Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of war and the sun, ascending toward your sacred duties as the city sleeps below. Each step upward takes you further from the ordinary world of daily concerns and closer to the realm where human actions directly influence the cosmic forces that govern existence itself. Your day began before dawn, as it has every day for the 23 years since you entered temple service as a young boy. The morning ablutions that prepare you for sacred duties involve more than simple washing. They represent a systematic transformation from ordinary human to ritual intermediary between earth and sky. Cold water drawn from sacred springs cleanses not just your physical body, but your spiritual essence, preparing you to handle forces that could destroy an unpurified soul. The black paint that covers your skin serves multiple purposes beyond mere identification. Made from charcoal mixed with sacred resins, it protects you from malevolent spirits while marking your dedication to deities whose power flows through darkness as well as light. The application requires careful attention. Each stroke follows patterns established by generations of predecessors. Each symbol carries specific meaning in the complex vocabulary of divine communication. Your long hair, never cut since entering the priesthood, hangs in matted locks stained with copal incense and sacrificial blood, a visible record of your years of service. The morning's first duty involves checking the sacred fires that burn continuously in temple hearts throughout the city. These flames must never be extinguished, because their light provides earthly reflection of celestial fires that warm the universe. You move from temple to temple through the pre-dawn darkness, adding precisely measured amounts of specially prepared fuel, certain woods that produce appropriate aromas, paper soaked in rubber, and copal that creates smoke pleasing to specific deities, human fat from sacrificial victims that transforms ordinary fire into divine sustenance. Each fire requires different materials and different prayers. The flame sacred to Tlaloc, god of rain, burns with blue-green hues created by copper compounds carefully prepared by alchemists who guard their formulas with religious secrecy. The hearth dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, goddess of flowers and love, receives offerings of flower petals and aromatic herbs that fill the temple with fragrances that somehow make the stone walls seem alive. The fire of Mictlantecuhtli, lord of the dead, consumes darker materials, bones ground to powder, obsidian chips that sparkle like stars, substances that most people never see and would not recognize if they did. The astronomical observations that govern your daily schedule require mathematical precision that would challenge modern scientists. Your position atop the temple pyramid provides unobstructed views of the eastern horizon, where you must record the exact moment of sunrise to maintain accurate calendar calculations. But sunrise varies throughout the year according to celestial mechanics that your predecessors spent centuries learning to predict. The stone markers placed around the temple platform allow you to measure these variations with accuracy measured in minutes rather than hours. The calendar system you maintain involves two interlocking cycles that create a complex rhythm of ceremonial obligations. The 260-day sacred calendar interweaves with the 365-day solar year to create a 52-year cycle of enormous religious significance. Every day falls under the influence of specific deities whose requirements must be met through appropriate ceremonies. Your responsibility extends beyond simply knowing what ceremonies are required. You must understand why they're required, how they connect to larger cosmic patterns, what consequences might follow from improper observance. The codices that preserve this knowledge occupy an entire chamber within the temple complex, bark paper books whose painted symbols record centuries of accumulated wisdom about divine requirements and cosmic mechanics. Reading these documents requires years of training because the writing system combines pictographic representation with phonetic elements and abstract symbols that represent complex theological concepts. You spend hours each day studying texts that describe proper procedures for ceremonies. You may not perform 4 years, memorizing prayers whose meanings operate on multiple levels of symbolic complexity. The preparation of sacrificial victims involves psychological and spiritual responsibilities that outsiders rarely comprehend. These individuals, warriors captured in battle, slaves purchased specifically for ceremonial purposes, volunteers who seek spiritual transformation through sacred death must be prepared not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually for their role in maintaining cosmic balance. Your interactions with them combine pastoral care with religious instruction, helping them understand the sacred significance of their approaching transformation. The victims often spend months in temple custody, during which they become part of the religious community rather than remaining prisoners awaiting execution. They receive instruction in sacred songs, learn dances that will be performed during their sacrificial ceremonies, participate in rituals that gradually transform their identity from ordinary human to sacred offering. Many develop genuine religious devotion that makes their final moments acts of worship rather than mere death. Your role involves nurturing this transformation while maintaining the emotional distance necessary to perform your duties when the appointed time arrives. The actual performance of sacrifice requires technical skills that combine surgical precision with theatrical presentation. The obsidian knives you use are sharper than steel, their edges capable of cutting through flesh and bone with minimal effort. But sharpness alone is insufficient. The cuts must follow prescribed patterns that have both practical and symbolic significance. The heart must be removed while still beating, extracted in a manner that preserves its integrity for presentation to the gods. The body must be positioned according to astronomical alignments that connect earthly actions to celestial influences. The psychological toll of these duties accumulates over years of service in ways that few people could endure. You've held hundreds of beating hearts in your hands, felt their warmth and weight, watched the light fade from eyes that moments before showed human consciousness and fear and hope. The training that prepared you for these responsibilities included techniques for managing the emotional impact, methods of spiritual detachment that allow you to perform necessary functions without being destroyed by empathy or guilt. The blood that stains your hands and clothing carries sacred significance that transforms its horror into holiness. This is not the blood of murder, but the blood of communion, the vital essence that connects human life to divine power. You understand that without these offerings, the sun would fail to rise, the rains would cease, the delicate balance that maintains existence itself would collapse into chaos. Every death you orchestrate prevents countless other deaths that would result from cosmic disorder. The calendar calculations that determine when sacrifices must occur involve mathematical complexity that extends far beyond simple astronomy. The movements of Venus must be correlated with agricultural cycles. The phases of the moon must be integrated with seasonal changes. Solar eclipses, which occur according to predictable patterns, require ceremonies that demonstrate human ability to anticipate and respond to cosmic crises. Your training included years of mathematical instruction that equipped you to perform calculations involving numbers large enough to track celestial cycles spanning multiple centuries. The sacred mushrooms and other consciousness-altering substances that facilitate communication with divine forces require careful preparation and administration. These materials are not recreational drugs, but sacramental elements that temporarily dissolve the boundaries between human and divine consciousness. Your role involves not just consuming these substances yourself, but guiding others through experiences that can produce either spiritual enlightenment or psychological destruction, depending on preparation and context. The visions that result from these sacramental experiences provide information that influences major decisions affecting the entire empire. Military campaigns are planned based on divine guidance received during ritual trances. Agricultural policies reflect spiritual insights about the gods' intentions regarding rainfall and crop productivity. The location and timing of major construction projects depend on revelations that come through consciousness altered by sacred substances administered under carefully controlled conditions. The isolation that comes with priestly duties extends beyond the physical separation of temple life. Your knowledge of divine requirements and cosmic mechanics creates psychological distance from people who live entirely within the ordinary human world. Conversations with family members, when they occur during your rare visits home, reveal how completely your perspective has diverged from normal human concerns. Their worries about daily survival and social relationships seem trivial compared to your responsibility for maintaining universal harmony. The physical demands of priestly life wear down your body in ways that accelerate the aging process. Constant exposure to incense smoke irritates your lungs and throat. The stone floors where you kneel for hours during lengthy ceremonies create permanent joint problems. Ritual scarification and bloodletting weaken your constitution over time. The irregular eating schedule, aired by ceremonial obligations, disrupts normal metabolic processes. You expect to live perhaps 40 years, and every year shows its course in your posture, your breathing, your ability to maintain the physical stamina that complex rituals demand. The intellectual rewards partially compensate for these physical costs. Your education encompasses mathematics, astronomy, medicine, history, theology, and artistic traditions that represent the accumulated wisdom of Mesoamerican civilization. You can calculate eclipse dates centuries into the future, predict weather patterns based on astronomical observations, diagnose illnesses using knowledge of herbal remedies developed over generations of systematic experimentation. Your understanding of architectural principles allows you to participate in temple construction projects that will stand for centuries. The artistic dimensions of priestly duties require skills that combine technical precision with aesthetic sensitivity. The murals that decorate temple walls must follow iconographic conventions that communicate specific theological concepts while achieving visual beauty that inspires religious devotion. The songs performed during ceremonies use poetic language that operates on multiple levels of meaning, literal descriptions of natural phenomena that simultaneously convey abstract theological principles. The dances that accompany major rituals require years of training to master movements that tell stories while invoking divine presence. The political responsibilities that come with senior priestly positions involve you in imperial administration at levels that affect policy decisions throughout the empire. Religious calendar requirements influence military campaign timing. Ceremonial needs determine tribute obligations imposed on conquered provinces. The construction and maintenance of temple complexes requires coordination with civic authorities responsible for labor mobilization and resource allocation. Your advice influences decisions about trade relationships, territorial expansion, and diplomatic negotiations with neighboring powers. The burden of preserving and transmitting knowledge creates constant pressure to identify and train your successors. The boys who enter temple service each year represent the future of Mesoamerican religious tradition, but their training requires decades of careful instruction in subjects that most people never encounter. Your teaching responsibilities involve not just practical skills, but philosophical understanding of cosmic principles that govern existence itself. The survival of your civilization depends on successful transmission of this knowledge to new generations. As the night reaches its deepest hour, and you stand alone on the temple platform, surrounded by the sacred fires whose light pushes back the darkness, you can see the entire city spread below like a constellation of earthly stars. The regular pattern of streets and canals reflects the cosmic order that your daily labors help to maintain. The sleeping population depends on your vigilance to ensure that the sun will rise again, that the rains will come in proper season, that the delicate balance between order and chaos remains stable for another day. The stars wheeling overhead follow patterns that your predecessors mapped with mathematical precision, their movements providing the fundamental rhythm that governs all earthly activities. You know the names of these star gods, understand their relationships to one another, can predict their positions years in advance. This knowledge carries the weight of cosmic responsibility, understanding that accompanies the power to influence forces beyond ordinary human comprehension. The wine that moves across a lake brings scents that tell stories about the surrounding landscape, the flowers that bloom in temple gardens, the copal incense rising from neighborhood shrines, the faint smoke of cooking fires where families gather for evening meals. But it also carries less pleasant odors that remind you of the costs involved in maintaining cosmic harmony, the smell of blood from sacrifice chambers, the acrid smoke of burning offerings, the unmistakable scent of death that clings to places where transformation between earthly and divine occurs. Your prayers rise with the smoke from sacred fires, words in ancient languages whose meanings have been preserved through centuries of oral tradition. These are not requests for personal benefit, but formal communications with cosmic forces whose proper acknowledgement ensures continued universal stability. The phrases follow prescribed patterns that encode theological concepts to complex for ordinary language, their repetition creating hypnotic rhythms that facilitate the altered consciousness necessary for divine communication. The loneliness of this responsibility weighs heaviest during these quiet hours, when the immediate demands of ceremony give way to contemplation of larger meanings. You understand that your entire life serves purposes that extend far beyond individual concerns, that your daily actions influence cosmic forces whose operations span millennia. The knowledge brings both profound satisfaction and crushing burden: the satisfaction of participating in something infinitely larger than yourself, the burden of knowing that failure in your duties could bring universal catastrophe. As dawn approaches and you prepare for another day of sacred obligations, the eastern horizon begins to show the first faint traces of light that herald the sun's return. This moment, which ordinary people take for granted, represents for you the daily confirmation that cosmic balance has been maintained through proper ceremony and sacrifice. The sun rises because you and your fellow priests have performed the necessary rituals, offered appropriate sacrifices, maintained the sacred fires that provide earthly reflection of celestial order. But with dawn comes renewed responsibility. The calendar wheels continue their inexorable turning, bringing new ceremonial requirements, new obligations to gods whose demands never cease. The cosmic forces that govern existence remain as mysterious and terrible as they were when your predecessors first learned to read their patterns in the movements of stars. Your life continues its steady rhythm of service to powers whose ultimate nature remains beyond human comprehension, sustained by faith that this service prevents chaos and maintains the delicate balance that allows life itself to continue. In the growing light, as the city below begins to stir with the activities of another day, perhaps you can find a moment of peace in knowing that your burdens are shared by the cosmic forces themselves, that the gods who demand such sacrifices also bear the responsibility for universal maintenance, that the terrible duties you perform serve purposes worthy of the costs they exact from human lives and human hearts. As our journey through the Aztec Empire draws to a close, we find ourselves back where we began, in the gentle comfort of your own time and place, far from the grinding necessities and cosmic responsibilities that shaped every moment of Mesoamerican existence. The morning mist has lifted from Lake Texcoco. The temple fires have been tended. The farmer has checked his chinampas, and the great wheel of ceremonial obligation continues its eternal turning. But here, in this moment, you can appreciate the simple luxury of lying in a bed whose comfort was unknown to the hardest-working emperor, breathing air that carries no sense of sacrifice or desperate labor, living in a world where the sun rises without requiring human blood to fuel its daily journey across the sky. The Aztec Empire, for all its architectural marvels and sophisticated urban planning, was built on foundations of necessity that would test the limits of human endurance. The farmer who began our story, if he were somehow transported to your world, would be overwhelmed by the abundance that surrounds you: food that requires no backbreaking labor to produce, clean water that flows at the turn of a handle, shelter that protects against weather without demanding constant maintenance. Even Montezuma, with all his imperial luxury, never experienced the simple security of knowing that tomorrow's survival doesn't depend on tribute flowing smoothly from distant provinces or gods remaining satisfied with their sacrificial offerings. The great city of Tenochtitlan, magnificent as it was, existed in constant tension with natural forces that could destroy everything in a single season. Every engineering marvel represented a victory from environmental constraints that threatened the survival of 200,000 people living in a location that nature never intended to support such a concentration. The priests who maintained cosmic order through their terrible duties lived with responsibilities that would crush most modern individuals under their psychological weight. Yet something profound was achieved in that world of endless struggle, a civilization that found beauty and meaning in the most challenging circumstances, that created art and architecture and systems of knowledge that still inspire admiration centuries after their creators turned to dust. The Aztec Empire demonstrated what human communities can accomplish when necessity forces innovation and cultural values prioritize collective survival over individual comfort. As sleep approaches, carrying you toward dreams that need not include calculations of tribute obligations or astronomical alignments, perhaps you can find gratitude for the historical accidents that placed you in this comfortable moment rather than in that world of magnificent hardship. The gentle darkness that surrounds you requires no sacred fires to hold back malevolent forces. The morning that awaits you will bring no demands for cosmic maintenance or religious obligations that could cost lives. Rest well in your soft bed, breathing easily in air that carries only the sense of safety and abundance, knowing that the sun will rise tomorrow, because of human sacrifice, but because of physical laws that require no intervention from earthbound creatures. The Aztec Empire, with all its wonders and terrors, exists now only in memory and archaeological fragments, while you exist in a present that offers possibilities for peace and comfort that even their greatest emperors could never have imagined. Let the sound of your own heartbeat, steady and peaceful, replace the rhythm of temple drums in your consciousness. Let the warmth of your blankets substitute for the heat of sacred fires. Let the security of your surroundings dissolve the ancient anxieties about tribute and sacrifice and cosmic balance that governed every moment of existence in that distant time and place. Sleep comes easily when survival is assured, when tomorrow brings no demands beyond those you choose to accept, when the greatest empire you must maintain is the small kingdom of your own well-being, sustained not by the blood of sacrificial victims, but by the quiet miracle of living in a time and place where such things are no longer necessary. The stars that guided Aztec priests through their calculations of cosmic duty shine down on your peaceful rest with the same light. But they ask nothing of you except perhaps a moment of wonder at the vast distances they represent, the eons of time they measure, the countless worlds they might illuminate, where other forms of consciousness struggle with their own versions of necessity and survival and the search for meaning in the face of forces larger than themselves. Rest now, comfortable in your freedom from the burdens that once seemed essential for maintaining the order of the universe itself.